Brought to you by Penguin.
How They Broke Britain, written and read by me, James O'Brien. This book is dedicated to the memory of James Jim O'Brien, journalist, 1939 to 2012. As long as the general population is passive, apathetic, diverted to consumerism or hatred of the vulnerable, then the powerful can do as they please, and those who survive will be left to contemplate the outcome. Noam Chomsky. Introduction. You can't actually boil a frog to death by popping it into a pot of cold water, placing it on a stove, and slowly turning up the temperature. When the heat becomes uncomfortable, the frog will hop out. Thermoregulation, evolution, and the fact that frogs are famously good at hopping will see to that. Boiling a frog remains a popular analogy because it conveys simply and effectively something that we know to be true. We often don't notice big changes if they happen in gradual stages, sometimes so gradually that we struggle even to notice the process until it is finished and the corruption complete. We wake up years later and reflect incredulously upon how things used to be, and then we wonder how such profound and unwelcome changes could have unfolded in plain sight. We know that we would never have accepted the new status quo if it had been offered to us at the outset, clear and complete. For while we recognise that the old status quo was imperfect and often horribly flawed, we still can't quite believe how far we have drifted from it and how measurably better things used to be. This is a story of slowly boiled water from which an entire country failed to escape. It is a tale of loss and betrayal, of unbridled arrogance and unchallenged ignorance, of personal impunity, warped ideology, and political incompetence. It is too early to say where the story will end, and impossible to pinpoint precisely where it began. But nevertheless, it is essential to identify the people and organisations which, sometimes by accident and sometimes quite deliberately, set the United Kingdom on a course of unnecessary domestic decline and international diminishment. Almost all of them remained in positions of power and prominence long after the damage they had done became clear to see. Many have since prospered, both professionally and privately, as the problems and tribulations they blithely ushered in took hold. None of them has ever offered the rest of us a single syllable of contrition or apology. It seems unlikely that they ever will. Worse, by the middle of 2023, it was becoming clear that the supporters of austerity, Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and sundry other disasters were determined to blame the consequences of their own epic errors on precisely the individuals and institutions that had spent years warning and explaining what those consequences would be. This last is a project that could only be contemplated, let alone completed, in a country already in complete thrall to the lies, prejudices and manipulations of what would once have been referred to as the ruling class. This book, then, is a charge sheet, a compendium of poor behaviour and bad actors. More importantly, it is also an attempt to record and explain the creation of an ecosystem in which dishonesty could flourish and facts wither, where ordinary people, divorced from but entirely subjugated to the levers of power and influence, were fed an almost unleavened diet of deceit, division and distraction. We will see that what has happened to the UK over the last few decades, notably since 2010, especially since 2016, and quite spectacularly since 2019, is as unforgivable as it is immense. Yet because those levers of power and influence are controlled by a comparatively tiny number of people in three easily identifiable and avowedly right-wing sections of public life, the media, politics and wealth, the sheer abnormality of the national situation is rarely noted. We have become so conditioned by the parameters of the ecosystem we inhabit that we rarely notice how completely ridiculous our political reality and our country has become. The proof is everywhere, careering ridiculously from the seemingly silly to the deadly serious. From tomatoes being rationed in British soup.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?